Good morning. We are here with our Break the Cage hangout for Saturday morning. It's 9 o'clock Pacific time, noon if you're in New York City, and I have no idea what time in London. But anyway, today it is Saturday, September the 6th, and we are almost to fall. And it's funny if you're in different places what that means, because fall up here in Edmonton, where we are for just a few more days, we'll be heading back I think Monday. We'll be back on Wednesday. But anyway, fall actually happens here. I mean, the days get noticeably shorter every day, and it's quite chilly when I go out for my workout in the morning and meditation. So yeah, I was out way before sunup today, and it was quite nice, quite still, and I have a video up if anybody wants to see what I was doing at dark 30. But anyway, today we're going to talk about they, the big monster they, and what that has to do with Break the Cage. Welcome, everyone, whether you're watching on live or you're on the tube later. So the three things I said we were going to cover today are the torture of what they will think. And they will think was, of course, in quotes. Who are they? What are they thinking? And why what they think doesn't matter are the three things we're going to cover today. So first, I want to challenge you right this minute to take a moment and think about something. I want you to be honest with yourself. Excuse me, my nose is still running from the workout. When I do that, come into the warm it. Sorry about that. Okay. When you think for a moment, honestly, how many things in your life have you not done, or have you done poorly, or have you hidden because you were worried about what they will think? Now, once in a while, this can be a benefit because you're doing something that later you're going to have to apologize for or hide. Okay, so maybe what they will think in that circumstance is a small deterrent to stupid things. Okay, possibly. But that's not really what we're talking about today. I'm not talking about refraining from dancing on the table when you're smashed because you're worried about what they will think, because that might be a healthy dose of deterrence. But let's talk about the things that you want to do, the things that you could do, the benefit that you could be, the talents and gifts that you could give, that you don't because you're worried that it won't be good enough. Now, this is something I personally am very and deeply familiar with because I've struggled with it. So despite the fact that I've been a big-time executive in the United States and Canada, that I've spoken around the world and a whole long list of other garbage, I have struggled all my life with what they will think, and I'll tell you where that came from for me. And while I do this, I want you to think of examples about who they are in your life, and one example, one really strong example of something you have not yet done because you're worried about being good enough or what they will think or ridicule or something like that. And then when I get done with this little story, I'm going to ask you, but while you hear the story, I want you to listen and resonate. So I was born with a significant musical ear, a lot of musical talent. I started piano very young. I could read music. I don't remember learning to read music, so I remember, far as I remember, I can read it. So I learned to read music about the same time I learned to read, sometime pre-K. So when I was 4 or so. So that's how long ago I started playing the piano. Then I started teaching piano when I was 17. I wrote my first songs in my teen years. I was performing regularly at that time. I played in a number of ensembles. I played in bands and a whole bunch of other stuff. Gone on to record a whole bunch of albums and everything else. And today, right now, I am in a group, a vocal group, a choir, and orchestra, and his youth choir, and so forth. We've released 4 albums in the last 4 years, and 3 of them have charted on Billboard. 2 of them hit #1 on Billboard charts in classical, and 1 hit #2 and was on the charts for several weeks. So it's not like I don't have all the external validation that I have musical chops. I have a whole bunch of albums out myself, techno and dance and jazz and adult contemporary and electronica and all kinds of stuff. Yet, because of something that happened that I'll share with you, I have lived in fear of fully expressing musical talent and ability, and pursuing that in a greater way is something I am doing now, finally. So what happened was I never was, quote, good enough growing up. No matter what I did in grades, performance-wise, I was always in a place of weakness at home because whatever I did wasn't good enough. My mom was a raging perfectionist, both in behavior and in music and everything else, and she was quite talented, but to this day has certainly never mastered the piano like I have and things like that. So my desire to get her approval has overshadowed and buried my desire for many, many years to do things. And at even one point I abandoned. I was at a point in my early 30s where I could just run the studio full time or continue with a career in electricity. Because of pressure and my desire to gain the approval there, I worried about what they were thinking. They thought music wasn't a legitimate career and you do weird things and bad people and whatever. Who cares what their judgments were? I gave in to that and abandoned my notion of having a musical career and instead went on to do the world-class stuff I did in electricity. So at that juncture, I basically paved over that section of my life and did it, you know, volunteer at church and things like that, but certainly didn't pursue it the way I could have and should have before. So that has resonated throughout my life and caused all kinds of problems for me because I lived in that world of what they will think. And the they in that case was particularly my mom, and that struggle has colored much of what I've done. So it's been serious, it's been long, it's been terrible, and getting over that has required all kinds of internal work, and I've talked to a few people and gotten some help and done stuff like that. So that is a terrible example of who the they was for me and my work to overcome it. Right now, to conclude the story, I'm working on an album right now called Songs of Promise and Power. 2 of the songs are done, 3 more written, so I'll have 5 done here in a couple weeks. Not a couple weeks, probably a month, and then I'll finish it. I'll have 10 done, be out by the end of the year. But it is a songs of liberation, songs of promise and power, and it will be done by the end of the year. So that's my final declaration of independence in that. Now that I've told you the story about me and a battle that I've had with that internal demon, I'll ask each of you if there's been a circumstance maybe where they have kept you from doing something that you really want to do and where you are in that struggle right now. Surely I talked long enough for somebody to have something to say besides me. Rick, I see your mic off. Go ahead.
I don't have anything to say significantly because my mind is busy telling me how perfect and ideal I am and how perfect and ideal my life is, and at the same time all I have to do is look around me and see that there's plenty that needs to be fixed. And so I know that it's something that I am concerned about for sure in the software work that I do with my colleagues. I certainly am concerned about what other people will think, but I'm learning how it's a struggle that I'm really working hard at so that I don't fail altogether, to learn how to just say, yeah, okay, feel the fear and do it anyway. So. Okay,
good. I'm not saying anybody has to have a story like mine, but I just want you to share some initial thoughts. Grizz, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that with regards to me cranking out some writing, publishing it actually, that for me the day is the day I imagine won't buy it. That it'll end up being a waste of time because nothing will come back to me for putting it out there. And so they won't buy it is the day that I'm facing the most.
Okay, I recognize that because that they is the same they you think about in music. Nobody will buy it. Mine has been a different scenario because of whatever, but I get it. So that means Rick says he's thinking about the approval of colleagues in his software work. I don't know, Rick, if software ultimately is your passion and that there's something else you want to do, or in addition to that, but that's okay. The worrying about colleagues and so forth, there's an amount of that has to happen because we have to. What we do has to work. It has to accomplish its function, right? And Grizz talked about being afraid to put out writing, being afraid to put out his creativity in writing because they are going to think it sucks and they aren't going to buy it. And Joy's got one. She's waving at me frantically. So we'll let her talk now. Go ahead, Joy.
Okay, I'm incognito, but I'm still here. I have to say that, I never suffered from this. So when I hear people say, maybe they won't like it, you know what? You're right. many people will not like it. They'll think it sucks, you're stupid, it's awful, but who cares? There's going to be a lot of people that do. So we focus on the negative. We focus on, oh no, we withdraw and go internal, and that, related to our own self-esteem or whatever, and we think, we contract, we don't expand. So, and often we'll think, well, gee, to get something out of it, but why not put it out there just for the sheer joy of, I created this. Many successful people, when you read their stories about songs and, Johnny Cash when he first started out, right? He was writing all these, singing other people's songs, and it didn't really click until he started putting his own words out in his own voice. But here's the thing that happens. When you put out your own stuff that's from within inside of you, whether you're a writer or, I like to design jewelry. I took I studied under a master silk painter from Kyoto, learning the old style Japanese kimono painting, and I absolutely love it. So I create what I love and what I like, regardless of whether or not somebody else is going to like it. Of course, I want somebody to like it because, I sell it, and I have sold a lot of it. But ultimately, it's for the own joy of doing it, regardless of what others are going to think. Because there's how many billion people on this planet? 7? Not everybody's gonna like us, or many people won't like us, but we have to do it in spite of or despite that, just for ourselves. And often you'll find that authenticity, that's what's going to come through and ring true. Authenticity, consistency. People are going to be drawn to that. You're going to draw your own tribe of people when you put your own stuff out with your own message. People are going to be attracted to that. So go for it, just do what you have to do just for your own pleasure of doing it. I'm done.
Great, and that's a perfect piece that we'll talk about more in number 3. I see we've been joined here by George. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So where we are is, I don't know if you've been following on YouTube, but we're talking about what they think. We've just been identifying issues and times when we have, struggled with the they, keeping us perhaps from doing things. And Joy chimed in with a long comment about her never being struggling with that. And I particularly am grateful for her because she's my business partner. She's also my wife. And so partly that level of encouragement has been very helpful in moving me to where I am right now. So, George, I didn't know if you came in because you had a comment or you just joining us.
Actually, I'm both. I've been following along on your event page. And the comment I'd like to share is ultimately, whatever our story, whatever the narrative or the situation, our they is simply an external projection of our inner voice of doubt. The more present we are to that narrative, whether it's we feel it's being reflected back to us, or whether we're actually mindfully present to it on our inner, that's the opposition. That's the inner argument that is up to us to make friends with and make peace with. I love what Joy said, because she really focused in on, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do what I love. And there's not a better motivation than, what burns as a fire in your heart, what you're passionate about. I love your story because it's a lifetime and a lifelong story of overcoming the voice of they, to really dive deeply into your own mastery and your love in music. I think that's a fabulous story, and I'd love for you to put some links up so that I can enjoy some of your music.
Okay, well, I'll do that. You can find it right now, the stuff that I have out that's electronic and dance music and so forth, on Amazon. I have a whole bunch of stuff on Amazon right now, so just put in my name or put in Techno Dance, TECHNODANCE, Techno Dance, on iTunes and so forth as well. But all of that being out there for worldwide distribution has been something fairly recent. I did some albums in the 80s and had some distribution, but again, that was the time when the pave-over happened, and so between 88, and now, 25 years later, I didn't put anything out, and now I have, and pretty good abundance the last 3 or 4 years. So if you look up my name or Techno Dance on Amazon, you'll see that. And this new song, Songs of Promise and Power, is a new kind of work, different. And the song's particularly and specifically aimed at breakthrough, encouragement, empowerment, and so forth. And I'm really, really excited about that. So I'll put a couple of those up pretty soon. They're done. I just, in fact, I don't think I put them up with my distributor. So thank you for that comment, George. And I want to, that leads exactly into the next part. So the next section, number 2, is what are they thinking? And George made the point that often this is a projection. We don't actually know what others are thinking. We actually do not know that. We imagine, we pretend, we project. And often it has been said, it was said I think originally in the Talmud, and then Stephen Covey quoted it, we do not see the world the way it is, we see the world the way we are. We see the world the way we are. And if that, what that means straight up is that if I am full of doubt, and that's what I think everybody's thinking, it's because I'm doubting. It's because I doubt me. The doubt that I'm intuiting from others is a reflection of my own circumstance. If I think other people are greedy, it is a powerful question to ask yourself, am I greedy? If I see the other people as hateful, am I hateful? Am I holding grudges? So it is a powerful question. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's going to like our stuff if we overcome that, because Joy's right. 90% of it, 80% of the world will not like my voice, not like my music, or not like Grizz, your writing, or whatever. You know what? I'm happy with 10%. Let's see, that would be 700 million people. That's okay. So I can deal with 700 million fans. So my point is, Joy's point that I want to emphasize is there's twofold here. One is who they are. Now, in my case, that came from childhood. It came from, I was physically beat a lot. My mom was really strict discipline, and stuff she did would have put her in jail today, but not then. And so, okay, I dealt with that and the perfectionism. And so that, you know, stretched throughout my life that has caused all these things. But the point is, I had a real they, but then it created this doubt because I've been out of my house since I was 17. I'm 58, so that's 40 years. And some change by any count. So a long time ago I could have declared my independence and done that, and that independence has been a slow process. Independence is a long word, and I guess I've been gradually doing things one letter at a time over all these years. And the funny part is I've had wild successes. I mean, I've been an ADM, Assistant Deputy Minister in Canada, a C-level executive in multiple countries, et cetera, and had wild success by any measure. People would look at me and think, you're crazy, you can't possibly do that, and think the answer is, yeah, I've been always overcompensating. Absolutely overcompensating, trying to prove forever to do stuff, and I happen to have been blessed with different skills, and so I was able to be wildly successful, but internally the voice never quieted. And so that's something that I've now dealt with, and George recognized that. So the question is, what are they thinking? So one, we don't know. Two, George has pointed, it might well be a projection of our own insecurities and fears, our inner voice of doubt, and being present to that, as he said, being aware of the fact that we see the world the way we are, not the way it is a powerful realization. There's a scripture somewhere that says truth is knowledge of things as they were, as they are, and as they are to come. When I think about that, that means understanding the truth of what is instead of what I project. So before we move on to the third part, which is why what they think doesn't matter, I want to open it up for any comments about what are they thinking after what I said about the points that I wanted to make, which is it might be our projection, which is what George said, and we actually have no idea what they're thinking. We're probably inventing it all anyway. Comments?
I noticed that one of the things that I've changed in my life in the last year is being more selective about who they are to me. So part of the reason I'm here is because you matter to me as a mentor, a teacher, a coach, and I'd rather be present with you and be more concerned about placing you in that position of they and what you think than the people who slowed me down when I was younger. And so for me, they has become actually more something that where I look for people who I can who are willing to teach me and lead me the way you do, and follow that guidance, and that has calmed my heart and soul quite a bit.
So that's a very good point, being selective and careful. You know, some people have said you become about the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. And they've made that point with respect to wealth, with respect to intelligence and education, with respect to manners and habits, even with respect perhaps to, you know, beliefs and thinking. You become the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. And I haven't done the studies to see that that's true or not. It's an interesting concept, and it certainly, obviously, has an influence, because the place you spend your time and the things you think about and do will have a huge direct impact on who you are, who you become, the things you value, you know, and the things you choose to aspire to. So mindfully picking those people in a careful and intentional way is a way to elevate your game, is a way to challenge yourself, and is a way to raise your standard of both, you know, education, wealth, and your ability to grow. So those are good, mindful choices. Any other comments before we move on to part 3?
Kellen?
Yeah.
You know, the other thing as well is that it's interesting that, you know, with so many different styles of music and art, you know, it's just, and with so many people on the planet, there's just so much opportunity to be creative and do the things that you do want to do. You know, if you want to be a writer, you have to start writing. You know, most people aren't going to, you know, hit the, you know, Pulitzer Prize, write, you know, their first novel, although many do, or win that Academy Award first time. I mean, it happens, but for most people, you know, we have to work at it. It's a skill that we have to, you know, grow in and become proficient in. Or if you want to paint, just start painting. But I just love the diversity of different types of styles on the planet, and somebody somewhere is going to gravitate. Look, people bought Velvet Elvis pictures. Somebody liked them. Somebody decided to choose that form of art. I'm not particularly attracted to it, but, you know, obviously people buy it. So, you know, just, you know, go for it. And, you know, I suppose that's easy for a person to say, well, you know, it's easy for you to say that, but I have different fears. But, you know, baby steps too. You know, start writing. Just, you know, start doing the things that you want to do. And I loved also Rick's point about, you know, the people you hang out with. Usually it's the people who, you know, that we try to please the hardest are the ones who've either bashed us the most or something like that, you know, so, you know, we'll never reach or, you know, achieve their approval. So it's just something, you know, an ingrained fear with us. So anyway, go for it. I mean, this is a safe environment also to, you know, test things, because you're never going to know what, you know, people think of it if you don't put it out there in the first place. You know, and that's part of the fear. But, you know, baby steps. There's a lot of safe environments for people to create stuff and put it out there. So I encourage people to do it.
Okay, great. The last part is why what they think doesn't matter. So let's just take this in little pieces. First of all, if you collect, now for a moment, I'm going to set the mindless they, that includes everybody in the universe, aside. It can be an unreasonable fear that everybody in the universe is going to hate me and everything that I do and say. So let's set that aside for just a moment. Most of the time, it embodies some group of people. My friends, the people that know me, the people that are close to me, they are going to not like what I do. They're going to disapprove in some way. So collect that entire group, okay, and see them in a line out away from yourself. And you think, okay, that is them over there. That's them. This is me. There's a separation there. They may not, let's say you're right, they don't approve and they don't like what you write or the music that I create or the paintings that I do or the silk paintings that Joy does, and I don't know what everyone else does except Griz's writing, but whatever that is, or the software that Rick programmed, let's say they don't, and that whole group of people that you can imagine, you see a long line of them. It's a microscopic fraction of people. And Joy's point about there being such a diversity of people, of things, when you see what is in festivals, when you see what is celebrated and given even awards in the different venues around the world, it is obvious, even if you're sort of honest with yourself, that there is an enormous diversity and an enormous range of opportunity, whatever your mode of expression is. And so even if you agree every person that you're afraid of isn't going to like, great. And if you set them aside, you won't even make a dent in the number of opportunities or people that there are in the world. So on its face, all of the people that you're afraid of actually don't matter. But the more important reason why I would say why what they think doesn't matter is this. When you give power to the mindless they, whether it's one person or 1,000, you have abdicated your most precious gift, which is your choice. You have abdicated the right that you have to decide what you do, what you create, and what you stand for. Think about that for a minute. You are abdicating your most precious gift as a human being, which is the right to think, be, breathe, and create as you choose. Even people, I forgot the name of the fellow, Viktor Frankl, in concentration camp in World War II, when he wrote afterwards about it, he said, even in our most intense extremity, he realized and said, they cannot rob me of my right to choose how I feel. My right to choose my attitude, my right to be who I want to be. Despite all of the physical constraints. In that extremity, he came to that, and that thought alone was what was sufficient to sustain him through that gruesome ordeal. Now, if in that circumstance, with those constraints, that is the liberating idea, then certainly those of us who have untold and unbounded freedom of creation, freedom of opportunity, can do nothing less than not abdicate that precious right to choose who you are, what you stand for, and what you create. And then an extension of that is the obligation to put it out in the world. So I'm going to move, and this is a challenge to you. Not only do you have the right to choose how you think and feel, but I would maintain that I have, and that you have, an obligation to sing the song you came to sing. You have an obligation to add good to the world. We collectively have an obligation to be and do something creative and positive, or else we have not filled any measure of creation. We have not filled the opportunities that are around us. We have left a vacuous hole. We can choose to do that because we have that gift of agency. But what a sad ending to abdicate the right of choice and to abdicate the opportunity to add good to the world. So let me ask right now, I'll pause here and see if there are questions or comments before I give a final thought, and then we'll wrap up.
Kellen, you regularly use the term agency, and I've long known about my own free will and my own choice, but your use of the word agency really adds, I think, another dimension that I'm just learning about, and it's a beautiful term, and I love how you use it. And if you would take a moment again and give a definition for how you see agency, that would I think add nicely to my understanding of this topic, which is really powerful.
Okay. Agency, in legal terms, is when one acts for another. So there's an agent, a purchasing agent or a legal agent, power of attorney. The attorney becomes the agent. So you can have an agent that acts before the IRS or an agent that acts for you in legal matters or in business matters. Agency, in the way that I'm using it, is the divine right of choice, the divine right to decide, to make choices that determine your true essence, your being, your expression. So some call it moral agency, some call it free agency, some people just call it agency, but it is the right that you have to be and represent yourself. No one can take that from you. I don't care if they lock me up in a straitjacket. I get to choose who I am in me. and how I represent, how I act in that circumstance. I get to choose whether I'm bitter, whether I scream and shout, whether I hate, whether I love. You know, Gandhi talked about those kinds of things. Christ did. Great leaders have all talked about our divine right internally to decide who we are and what we are as an essence. And agency is the conscious exercise of that right. The conscious exercise of the right to determine who you are and what you stand for and what you stand against. But the conscious choice of that divine right to decide what you do. And so often we abdicate. We decide by default. We decide by not deciding. We decide by being afraid of others. We decide by fearing an outcome. We let the decision be outside of us. And being in fear of what others think is an abdication of that choice to the nameless other or to the specific other. The they that we either know or that we imagine or that we have projected. And we allow them to make that choice for us, and then we abide by it as though we were in chains. And so that's how I think of agency, and then the extension was the obligation that we have to exercise that agency to add good to the world and to create. Dale Carnegie talked about that. He said it was his, in How to Win Friends and his other writings, he talked about the opportunity that each of us have to add to the sum total of happiness. And the way I have phrased that is add good to the world. I did a film clip and stuff about that a year or two ago. And I was in it doesn't matter. But anyway, add good to the world is the way I express that. But Dale Carnegie talked about our opportunity to add to the sum total of happiness. And every time we choose to do something, we can choose to add misery, we can choose to add good. So I choose to add good, and that's what I think our obligation is with your gifts and talents, without fear of who they think. And they, whoever they are, have the obligation to do the same thing. So that's what I think about that. Any other comments about this topic or anything else before I issue my final challenge?
Yeah, a couple of brief, quick points. One, I love your definition of agency, and for me, my own personal definition is how we claim authority and authorship over our life, period. If we allow ourselves through consent to be defined by something other than ourselves, then we're giving up our power. So I love your definition, and I agree with it. The other piece I desire to share is when we have attachments to external opinions, for me, it really is a reflection of our inner resistance and avoidance of our own creative process, period. And so my invitation to myself is to redirect my focus from those externals and or my internal resistance and simply pour myself into my own creative process. And for me, here on the Plus, which I'm relatively new still, my practice of that is I use the Plus as a microblogging site. And it's been an exercise in walking through my own resistance to create on a regular basis, but also my resistance of being seen and being seen in an unfiltered way. So that's my practice in actualization, and those are my two bits to share.
Thank you very much for that, because it leads right into the challenge. So you use Plus as microblogging. Thank you. And the attachment, I like the way you've described that. So it's an attachment to our own fears. It's an attachment, the attachment to those opinions, sorry, is a reflection of that. And I couldn't agree more, because effectively what we do is we let that create the fear in us and keep us from doing what we should do. So here's my challenge. Break the cage. Today, that means pick one or maybe two things. George articulated two, where he is new on the Plus, he said, and he's using it as microblogging, at regular creativity and the fear of being seen unfiltered by others. All of us have things like that. That fear of approval by others is the same thing that has delayed music for me and is now something I'm obliterating by having this creativity, and I happen to own a recording studio and happen to be good at all that, so I have all that blessing to be able to express it, but I have the same fear, oddly enough. So here's my challenge to you. Everyone suffers from these holdbacks to a small degree, perhaps Joy, which she says never, and maybe that's true, or to a large degree, like I know I have some in the past. So my challenge is this: be consciously aware, take an inventory for just a few minutes, not a big 5-hour project, of things that you, in the heart of hearts, know that you're holding back from. Things that you know you are not doing, or you are not taking the responsibility to exercise your agency, your right of determination, your right to be the author of your life, and make a conscious choice to do that. Do that every day. For this week, put your results in the comment page here below. Let's just keep track of it a little bit for each other and for ourselves. And I encourage anybody that watches this on YouTube to do the same. And let's see if we can create just a small ripple of change, because we today have decided to exercise our agency, to add good to the world, to own the authorship of our life, to do the things that we can do, to be a bit unfiltered, and let the glory and the power that is our divine choice be exposed to the world, and in that way, learn to break the cage. Thank you all for coming today. We're past our half hour. I'm going to pop the end button, and we'll see you next week.